As this is my first opportunity to speak at length in this House following the election, I would like to thank the good people of Yorkton Melville for placing their trust in me once again for a fourth term. Their endorsement and their faith in me means the world to me, and I will strive every day to ensure they're represented and championed in this place. But today I rise to speak on a real crisis that's affecting so many individuals, businesses, first responders in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, and northeastern BC. Wildfires, including many in northern Saskatchewan, continue to spread, prompting evacuations in over 24 communities and impacting air quality across our region. Yesterday, we learned that L'Orange, along with Orange and Lac L'Orange Indian Band, are facing mandatory evacuations. Approximately 8,000 residents in Saskatchewan have been relocated, with the number expected to rise as the fires continue to grow. My thoughts and my prayers are with the thousands that have been forced to leave their homes and businesses behind and seen loved ones lost. My thoughts and prayers are with the first responders who've been working around the clock to contain the destruction. I think of their loved ones as they are putting everything on the line for the safety of other families, neighbors, and friends. How thankful we need to be to charities and community groups that exist to provide shelter and aid. Many are community heroes and are facing the same danger and uncertainty as those they're serving. These emergencies, this crisis, reveals the best of Canada, communities that care for each other and make sacrifices that go so far beyond. For those of us who are not in the line of the fire but are dealing with heavy smoke, it can be very precarious, especially for the vulnerable. Staying inside with windows and doors closed, using an air purifier, wearing an N95 mask if you must venture out when the air quality is poor is being recommended. If the worst case scenario concerns you, prepare an emergency kit ahead of time, if at all possible, in case of sudden evacuation orders. Saskatchewanians are resilient and resourceful, looking out for one another, and we will get through this. Tonight, specifically, we're debating in what ways the federal government can and should be best responding to the crisis and where it needs to do better. Canadians are not entirely at the mercy of these wildfires. While the primary responsibility of wildfire suppression rests with municipalities, provinces, and territories, the federal government is not a bystander. At the same time, the federal role in wildlife response remains ill-defined, underpowered, and poorly understood, not just by Canadians, but by the very provinces that are supposed to rely on it in a time of crisis. In most cases, the provinces lead, and we must respect that. But when disaster strikes at this scale, Canadians expect the federal government to show up with real coordination, real support, and real action. However, there's currently no federal agency with the teeth, mandate, or resources to coordinate equipment, aircraft, or manpower. Other countries have interjurisdictional bodies that mobilize resources quickly and cut red tape. Why doesn't Canada? Conservatives continue to call for a stronger mandate for federal emergency preparedness, not to override the provinces, but to assist them to streamline response and bring order to chaos when every second counts. Furthermore, it's time to get serious about criminal arson. The current criminal penalty for arson is 14 years in prison. In some cases, perpetrators of intentional acts of arson resulting in property damage have faced less than 1 year of their prison sentence. Like all aspects of this government's approach to crime, this has to change. The Liberals must establish mandatory minimum sentences to deal with individuals who deliberately endanger communities and destroy livelihoods. It remains to be seen if this government will truly change its ways regarding fighting climate change and natural disasters. Implementing tax after tax is not an environmental plan. Canadians are calling for targeted expenditures to reduce emissions and fight wildfires, to build critical infrastructure resiliency and greater support for our frontline firefighting, including labor incentives, not an inflationary carbon tax. When disaster strikes, there's no time for delay while different levels of government scramble to define their roles. Canadians deserve a plan with delineated responsibilities and a government that is focused on prevention and preparedness before disaster strikes. We also need to recognize what the federal government should not be doing. For this, I turn to a specific example that also greatly impacted Westerners, and not too long ago. The Jasper National Park wildfire disaster is still fresh in the minds of Canadians. The federal government holds direct responsibility for wildfire management on federal lands, including our national parks. This Liberal government ignored repeated warnings from scientists, forestry experts, and local residents about the increasing wildfire risk in Jasper National Park. Environment Minister of the day, was warned about the compounded threat that longstanding fire suppression, the mountain pine beetle epidemic, and a warming climate posed to the region. In their own words, the likelihood of a catastrophic wildfire event was a matter of when, not if. By suppressing fires over a long period of time, Parks Canada created unnatural forest conditions and a prime environment for the mountain pine beetle to thrive. Experts recommended an urgent program of prescribed burns and the removal of dead trees. Sense, just common sense. Yet several years passed and no significant policies changed to forest management were implemented. Every year from 2014 to 2020, the number of completed prescribed fires remained well below what were planned. In 2020, only 8 of 33 planned fires were completed. Even after a sustained campaign of pressure on Parks Canada to change its approach, Jasper National Park remained much like, and I quote, a powder keg waiting to blow up. As experts predicted, the worst-case scenario unfolded. The 2024 Jasper fire was one of Canada's most devastating natural disasters, resulting in the destruction of nearly one-third of the town, $880 million in insured losses, and the displacement of over 25,000 residents and visitors. Our thoughts remain today with the town of Jasper and all those who continue to rebuild their lives in the wake of the disaster. The same will apply to those who are grieving loss with these wildfires. Speaker, it's one thing to have the benefit of hindsight when holding a government to account for its failures, but to have been given hard lessons from a catastrophic event and not act on those lessons is contemptible. Recent conversations with the same forestry experts in Jasper do not give reason to believe that the Liberals have corrected their course as Parks Canada continues to lack the appropriate response to effectively manage forests in national parks. But even more concerning is the role that ideology has played in forest management. It has been discovered that under directions from this government, Parks Canada prioritized political optics over proactive prescribed burns. The following is a quote from a senior Parks Canada director. At what point do we make the organizational decision to cancel prescribed burns in Western Canada? As more and more media articles rise, public concern over drought conditions, public and political perceptions may become more important than actual prescription windows. In addition, ministers' answers to Conservative questions in the House repeatedly emphasize their commitment to preserving ecological integrity without defining what that means in practice. We know that it meant ignoring experts, denying the science on effective forest management. The federal government has a responsibility to admit they failed and take immediate action to change their ideology, their behavior, and their lack of respect for those who are experts in forest management, preservation, and conservation. I question Parks Canada's implementing ecological corridors, connecting their 30% and 50% of Canadian land and waterways to be protected areas by 2030 and 2050. Respectively. How can they be trusted to be stewards of Canada's amazing wilderness, national parks, pristine waterways when they turn a blind eye to the basics of protecting the biodiversity of our national parks, allowing the forests, flora, and amazing wildlife to be wiped out by a devastating preventable fire for the sake of their need to alarm and take no blame for their decisions to do nothing? Let's not allow the victims of wildfire to have to suffer and sacrifice in vain. The federal government has clear obligations to listen to scientists and industry experts on the dangerous long-standing forest management practices posed. For the sake of Jasper, my home province of Saskatchewan, and Canadians across the country, we know public safety is at stake. Wildlife impart lessons that we cannot afford to ignore.
Questions and comments? The member for Whitby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I empathize tonight with all of the members of the northern Saskatchewan and Manitoba communities that are impacted. It's unfortunate that in a time of crisis, when people are in dire need and government is working to coordinate an effective response to evacuate people, that we see in this House the Conservatives try to politicize and blame the government for wildfires, which we know are fundamentally connected to the climate crisis, that the frequency of these extreme weather events, including wildfires, has been increasing. I know the member opposite has been one of the climate deniers in this House that I've seen time and time again propagate all kinds of different conspiracy theories to essentially not acknowledge the science. So she had said that we're turning a blind eye. I think she's turned a blind eye to climate change. Will she finally accept that climate change is real?
The member for Yorkton Melville.
I included climate warming as one of the factors in the Jasper fire and what Parks Canada needs to do. The reality is that the majority of these fires, as was mentioned by my colleague from Winnipeg, out of 20-some fires, only 4 were not started by humans. So clearly, you are, the members across the floor are exaggerating the dynamics in this particular situation, as I know is the case for northern Saskatchewan as well. The truth of the matter is we need to be doing more with our resources for the sake of the world. You refuse, the members across the floor, refuse to recognize the fact that Canada has so much it should be doing for the entire world. Climate change does not begin or end at our borders, and they are missing the best opportunity possible to make a difference in the world when it comes to climate change.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The member for Peace River, Westlock.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And in the similar vein, I would like to thank the member for her question. It is interesting that the Liberals always want to point out the causes of things into things that they can't control, and yet there is a whole host of government policy that has been put in place that have limited the forestry company's abilities to manage the forest. And so I just wonder if the honourable member has more comments about forest management practices that she has heard about. She mentioned 30 by 30. If there's other things that she has, other government policy that she notes that the Liberal government has put in place that limit this ability. Thank you.
Member for Yorkton Melville.
Oh, there's so much that this government has done to inhibit and prevent Canada from becoming as prosperous as it should, because they are limiting our abilities as a nation to extract those resources that we talk about over and over again in this place that are so crucial to the economy of this country. So the truth of the matter is, everything that they did in that case with the Jasper fire, I know they get really sensitive about it, and I can understand that because they've chosen not to take responsibility for decisions that they made that have impacted Parks Canada and all of our parks becoming more of a tinderbox simply because they refuse to do the right things and allow the people that know how to manage our forests to do the work that they know how to do.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The member for Courtney Alberni has caught my eye.
Mr. Speaker, we know that these wildfires are happening year over year over year. And there's a lack of coordination. The Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs are asking that the federal government establish a national fire administration to ensure that there's sufficient subject matter expertise and coordination in these predictable and precedented crises. But they also want it to serve as a nucleus to help organize and coordinate efforts. Does my colleague agree that the federal government should act now to finally establish this important administration that, again, has been a call to action by the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs?
The member for Yorkton Melville.
I thank the member for the question. It's good to see him again. The truth of the matter is, from what I've been reading even about ecological corridors and all the things that this government says it's going to do, they choose to get their consultation from their own people who haven't got the expertise. And here we have firefighters across this nation that are prepared to assist this government with the things that they need to do, and they turned a blind eye. There's a number of promises that they made recently, 2019, that they have not come through with, and as a result, we continue to see the fires that we are facing in this nation. They need to basically listen to the experts and get out of the way.